Hello everyone, welcome to our latest video in the Head in the Cloud series hosted by Citrus Global. Here we have Martin Exequiel Zulliger, very talented individual who is a DevOps engineer, a developer, an architect, and he's also been an interim CTO, so a man of many talents. We're going to discuss a few questions today about things throughout lockdown that are relevant, I suppose, to current affairs and the current market. So, Martin, if you'd like to give a quick introduction of yourself, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So basically, as you said, I am, first of all, I think I'm a developer. That's what I love the most doing, and I always try to do, so to say, because, you know, in development, if you stop developing for like a half a year, then everything has changed, and then you have to start over, basically learn. That's how it works. And at the same time, also for different reasons, I end up also doing management positions. I had my own company in Spain. Okay, I'm originally from Argentina, then I was many years in Spain. Now I am in Berlin, that's the story. And then in Spain, I had my own company. It was an internet service provider, and therefore there I got basically familiarized with all these DevOps and networking and infrastructure stuff. And then here in Berlin, I've been doing mostly freelancing and acting as interim CTO sometimes, as architect sometimes. And finally, on the side, I have a indie game company. We are working on our second game right now.
Oh, wow.
So I'm doing many things, and I'm keeping myself busy. That's basically what I do.
So fingers in many pies, as the saying goes. That's
yeah.
it. So I mean, keeping it relevant at the moment, obviously lockdown has been testing for everyone. But how were you during lockdown? How did you find it? How's it been for you personally?
Well, I am lucky to say that actually I personally and you know, my family, which is the people that I work with, mostly, we didn't really feel it. I can. For a number of reasons, I can say that I'm a little bit paranoid. I'm always, you know, expecting the worst. I think that's something that we Argentinians have, but for a number of reasons. But I'm not going to go into detail. But the reason is that the thing is that I'm always expecting something horrible to happen. That's true. But you know how it's the saying, right? Just that you're a paranoid doesn't mean that they are not after you. So I think that that applies, and somehow I've always, you know, been doing things in a way that if something goes wrong, you always have a B plan, and that, you know, you are not attached. That's also why I also like freelancing. I don't like to attach to a company, because you don't know what if the company goes down, then it's much harder to find another job. Instead, if you're doing short projects, the time to market, so to say, is much shorter. So for all these reasons, I prepare for everything, and one of those things was also to work remote. For me, is working remote was always my priority number one. From 2017, I think, I was working entirely remote, and from that time to now, sometimes some projects were partially remote, but there was always at least 70% of the time in work at home. Okay.
Yeah.
And some projects, many projects, 100%.
That's good.
And to be honest, working remote, being used to work from home, working a distributed team, all these things kind of made it, you know, very natural for me to face the lockdown. I can say I was really lucky. And finally, this is a joke, but it's not a joke. I'm not a person that really likes to go out. So during lockdown, I was telling everyone that at least I don't need to come up with a text not to go out. That's very good.
Like pretending to enjoy going out, you didn't have that issue there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. Oh, good. Well, sorry, there was a bit of lights. The light switched on and off there during that question, but apologies for that. But so you didn't. I suppose you didn't find it too difficult then. But I suppose it did affect everyone in some way, shape, or form. I mean, what were your biggest frustrations, or you had any? Did you have any frustrations? If so, what were they throughout the
That's it. That's a good question. So actually, I was thinking, right, what was the worst of all this for me? I mean, of course, I know. I mean, some people in my family they actually got COVID, so I had kind of a first. well, luckily they are fine, but
Good.
one of them particularly did not go, like, it wasn't so easy on him. Right now he's better, luckily, but yeah, it was a little bit nasty, so to say. But anyway,
Sorry to hear that.
so I know, yeah, and I also know a lot of people have lost friends, family, etc. So
Yeah.
so I consider myself really lucky in that sense. And then on the other side, what was like frustration during the pandemic, to be honest, nothing. There's nothing that I would say really frustrated me. Not, as I said, all my life I've enjoyed being locked in my room coding,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what I did during 3-4 months. So it wasn't, to be honest, it sounds bad, but to be honest, it was great for me.
Yeah.
So in that sense,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, if I had to go through in my teens, I would have paid, to go through 10 pandemics in a row when I was a teenager. So because I was like always, the typical geek, locked in your room, working like coding all the night. So for me, this was somehow natural, and that's why I know that it's been ugly. But I have to be honest, also, I was kind of made for this. Gamers and developers, I think, don't really face that issue. But I can say that there was a frustration afterwards, and the frustration after the pandemic for me has been that I have the feeling that some people are not are failing to grasp or to realize the fact that the world has changed, and that they cannot expect to go back to how things were half a year ago.
Yeah, agreed.
And I've seen this in a lot of different environments and in a lot of different aspects. But one of the aspects that I've seen is that many startups, especially, they refuse to allow people to work remote, which is really silly because, I mean, the pandemic is not over. We are actually in some countries there are more cases now than it was like at the beginning, right? Yeah. So, for example, in Argentina, unlikely. But the reality is that some companies they are like asking everyone to go back to the office, and funny enough, it's usually, I would expect that from huge corporations, which they tend to be slower and more conservative and etc. But what I've seen so far, and with the companies that I've dealt, it's been kind of the opposite. Like all the companies, they're happy to allow people to work from home, and they have even companies which are not IT companies, but companies which do other, they have an IT department, but they come from different worlds, like construction, for example. They're happy to let the people who can work from home freely without any issue. And companies which are startups and tech startups, they are asking everyone to go to the office. And that for me is a little bit, okay, you should have learned something during this time, and at the end, I think that's an issue for them. I mean, the fact that the unthinkable happened, it means that it can happen again. So I think that if you're a startup, you have to be prepared to move fast and to adjust to any situation. And working remote has a lot of advantages, which I can discuss later. But one of the biggest advantages is that you're much more resilient if you have already a remote working structure. And that's also why it didn't really affect me, because I was used to work remote. I was in my side projects, everybody was working remote also. We were working with some guys from Argentina, also remote. So for us, it was like impact was nearly zero, because we were already used to this. I mean, for our companies that they had to start working remote, they didn't have a remote workflow, they didn't have the tools, maybe, etc. Of course, for them was a big disruption. But if you are already used to it, then you are much more resilient and you are much more prepared. So to say.
No, I understand, and to be honest, it's an interesting point you make. Like throughout the pandemic, I was still working and had conversations with certain businesses, ranging from startups to big enterprises, and a lot of the conversations I were having at the time, they said, people are going to be able to work remotely for the foreseeable, but since there's been some active roles that have come live, or I've had conversations since, and they're still actually wanting people on site, whether it be for onboarding or a few days a month or a few days every few weeks. And they're not really, I suppose, sticking to their word. But it's an interesting point. And you say about lessons, you hoped that they would have learned their lessons. What lessons have you learned, would you say, since the pandemic, or since?
That's a good question. So the first lesson that I learned is, trust your instincts. As I said, I was always paranoid,
Yeah,
and at the end, my paranoid, my paranoia proved to be not so wrong. So it was good to be always prepared for everything. Of course, you don't have to be, crazy, but
yeah,
you always have to try to design things so that they are as resilient as possible. I think that's also that you learn when you do networking.
yeah,
When you work in networking, everything can go wrong. Like people, literally, I had people burning cables, cutting cables. I had all sorts of like animals eating. Like we had all sorts of crazy
yeah,
stories, and you have to be prepared for everything. So you design your network, and you design your infrastructure, and you design even the entire organization so
yeah,
that never, internet never goes down, the service never goes down,
yeah.
and whatever happens, it has to continue to work.
Mm.
Believe me, in the middle, if you cut people's internet in the middle of a Madrid Barca of a Barcelona game,
Yeah,
people get really, really, really angry.
yeah.
And I am luckily went through that experience, especially living in Spain. And that was that was something that it teaches you a lot about
In El,
fear.
El Clasico, you mean Barcelona, Madrid? Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. So if you're the unlucky person to be running the ISP, that is providing the service to watch the game, yeah, it's really bad if you have a service
yeah,
interruption. So you learn to design everything and to build everything so that
yeah.
nothing will interrupt the service. The show must go on, whatever happens.
Of
And
course,
I
yeah,
think and I think that, yeah, working remote is one of the many things that you can do to allow that.
yeah,
And from my perspective, that is one of the things that I learned is that I was right,
yeah.
and that I have to trust. I have to continue this way. That the path that we decided was good, and yeah, that we're doing it right, basically.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point. Yeah, you mentioned about Real Madrid Barcelona game. I think after Barcelona's last performance against Bayern Munich, I think a lot of people would have been happy for it to cut off. But maybe so. But we'll move on from that. We don't want to say anything too bad about Barcelona.
We
But
don't talk about football or politics.
no, of course. But it sounds like you coped very well with, I suppose the pandemic and what happened.
Mhm.
If you could have gone back in time, would there have been
Mhm.
anything you might have done a bit differently to prepare for it, or make a few tweaks or adjustments at all, if so? But in hindsight, looking
Well,
back,
honestly, I think that mostly it went well. I think that, yeah, maybe I would have, as I said, taken my precautions more seriously. I think that I never saw working remote per se as a resilience thing,
right?
as something that will actually make us more resilient. And it
Yeah,
was mostly for me. I mean, it has, as I said, it has many advantages, but for me, it was, flexibility. It was easier for me to work from home. I saved time traveling, etc. So I didn't consider it as a, so to say, as a critical part of the company, right? As something that makes our structure continue to survive whatever happens. After the pandemic, I realized that actually, almost accidentally, but not so, working remote was also a big, and being a remote organization in general, because we everything we do it online, basically.
yeah,
So this actually brings you a lot of resilience. And then I was thinking the case of, for example, the Estonian government. The Estonian government works entirely online, 100%.
oh, right.
They designed that so that, if another country, neighbor, I'm not going to mention, decided to invade them, they could continue to exist. They
Ah,
could continue to run the government. Actually, all the data from the Estonian government is not even in Estonia. It's in distributed in a number of secret, data
really?
centers around the world.
Interesting.
Absolutely, that's
I didn't know
that's
that.
that's true. Yep. And the thing is that, we, even without, really planning to do so, but kind of, I built my work and my little organization, my clients, and the people I work with. We kind of built a similar structure, without even, really going after that, but just
Yeah,
out of necessity, right? Because we're in different parts of the world, and we have to work together, etc. But now, if I, looking back, I think that I've learned that it's also part of the resilience of your organization. There are companies that have died, absolutely. They thanks to the pandemic, lots of business just disappeared, like overnight, literally overnight.
Yeah, and I imagine more will as well. More will continue to do so throughout. It's going to be testing times for a lot. It really is.
Absolutely, and that's why I think that it's important for the survival of your company to have a B plan for whatever disaster. And I think working remote and being a distributed organization is part of this survival plan. They say that if we had prepared for the pandemic, what the governments would have had to invest would be only 2% what the pandemic has cost so far. Not to mention the life, and of course, and I'm not mentioning like the almost 200,000 people that have died, but and all the other horrible stories. But only in economical terms, it would have been a very, very good investment, to prepare for it. Yeah, and I think that as an organization and as a private person, you can also prepare for everything or for many things, right? You have to prepare.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that what I've learned and what I would have changed is to take this more seriously and to not to say, okay, I'm just paranoid and expecting the worst, but actually it's part of the strategy of survival, of the company survival at the end.
Yeah, well, that brings me on to my next question. I was going to say, what do you think is here to stay in the long run as a result of all this? I know you've touched on a bit of it there, but what do you think personally, or what do you think is here to stay?
That's a great question. So personally, first of all, of course, I've been blabbing a lot about it, the remote work.
Yeah.
For me, which is great because, as I said, I consider it. I really enjoy to work from home. Right now, I'm at home, but also I think it has a lot of advantages. First of all, it's greener because you don't spend fuel to go anywhere. You stay from home, so hence it's more environmentally friendly, which is. I mean, imagine most of the pollution right now comes from cars. If people don't go in cars, basically don't go to work, then you would be cutting a lot of CO2 emissions, a lot. So that would be the first thing that I can mention. But then as a company, and it makes you, as I said, more resilient, more robust. Should something happen, whatever it is, you have more chances to survive it. You, as an organization, if you are distributed, if you have everything online, right now the technology for that exists. We have the tools, we have the technology, we just have to want to use it. And some people just refuse to. But actually, it is entirely possible, and I can tell you from my personal experience. So, and of course, another thing is the advantages of I just was thinking about my son, right? I was a father 4 days ago. Again,
congratulations once again.
Thank you. So I have a daughter at 2 years old, and then I have this little 4-day-old boy. And of course, if you're working from home, it's much easier to do the family work balance. It's much easier because it doesn't mean that you're not working, that you're all the time playing with your kids instead of doing what you're supposed to. But also it's more flexible. I mean, first of all, my wife can be taking care of the kids for some time, then I can take the kids for other time. So we don't even need to take them to the kindergarten. We can keep them at home and still take amazing care of them. I'm not saying that it's right to take them to a kindergarten, but of course, if they're with the parents, they're going to be better cared for. Of course, that's a fact. So all of this, it's only possible if you work remote, because if I or my wife have to go somewhere, then you either have to leave the kids with their grandpas or in the kindergarten or whatever. You can just simply cannot do. By working from home, it gives you that. Then you have the flexible timetable, because unless you have a meeting, you can pretty much work any time of the day, and then you adjust. And then when the thingies are sleeping, then you have more time to work. Then you can work different hours. I learned to get up at 4 and 5 a.m.
Wow.
And I work during that time because that's when Bella sleeps. So it's great. Yeah. And I at the beginning I thought it was horrible, but then I really got used to it, and now I enjoy it now. Yeah. So you can adjust. You have many more tools to adjust and to survive, not just a disaster, but also something wonderful or disastrous, like having a daughter, having a child. you really you are more flexible, and therefore you have a better capacity to adjust, right?
Yeah.
So that for me, I think is the most important learning, and I think that's what we should take from this. I think that's what everybody should learn, that first of all, organization resilience is very important, that you have to think about that prepare for a flood, for an earthquake, and for a pandemic.
Yeah.
It's not being crazy, it's not being a paranoid, conspiranoid, like in Spanish you have this word conspiranoico, it's this conspiracy and paranoid. So it's like,
okay. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it's a Spanish thing.
I'll take that one.
Yeah, so you don't have to be, believing in conspiracies or being paranoid. It can actually happen. The unthinkable, as I said, happened already.
Yeah.
What we're living right now, what we're talking about right now, was kind of like a sci-fi theme half a year ago.
It's a future history lesson. It really is. We're living in a future history lesson. It is like a bit of a film. It's crazy.
It's true, absolutely. So now we have to say, okay, yeah, this can happen, and we have to now next time. Okay, we did some things well, we did some things not so well. We have to learn from this, and we have to be prepared, because the next time maybe it can be even worse. We don't know. So I think that's the first thing. Then the second thing, as one of the strategies to be prepared, and also because of the many advantages that it has, remote work, I think that it's coming to stay. I've seen super large organizations like Google, saying, telling people you can work from home until next year. And I don't remember who it was. I think it was Twitter. I don't remember, but one of them told, from now on, forever, you can work from home. And I think that's great. And I think that it's really learning the lesson. And I think that will make people happier, because at the end, saying that you can work from home means I trust you. I trust that you will do what you have to do. Yeah. And I don't have to be, hovering over your shoulder to make sure that you're working. Because from my perspective, that there's nothing that can annoy me more than micromanagement. To have to micromanage someone and to be micromanaged, those things, they annoy me the same. And I think remote work is the ultimate, is the ultimate demonstration of trust. It's like, listen, I don't care. Just do it where you want. If you're at home or on the beach or in the International Space Station, I don't care.
As long as it gets done to some quality. Yeah.
As long as it gets done. Yeah, that's the ultimate, demonstration of trust. And I think that if you trust people, then they will, demonstrate. They will give you back. You cannot expect results, or you cannot expect, trust if you don't give trust. And that's how I see it. And that's how I think that's going to happen for the majority of the world. and that's what I hope that will happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, like, moving forward, businesses, well, hopefully will give some a bit more autonomy for their staff, and show that flexibility, and as you say, allow them to manage their lives around their schedules, their families, much better and more efficiently, I suppose. But time will tell. I mean, I think you've answered a lot of that already. I was going to say, what advice would you give to businesses, like, moving forward? If you were to give some advice, what would be your advice moving forward to businesses?
Basically what I just said. First of all, understand that that disasters happen. we can see that. That preparing for a disaster doesn't mean that you're crazy or paranoid. It means that you're doing what you have to do. I remember one of my clients, when the pandemic, huge corporation from very traditional corporation here in Germany, when the pandemic started, they did before. I mean, when it started just in China, this was basically in February, before all the mess, so to say. They sent everyone home, and they said, okay, we're going to make an experiment to work like 2-3 days from home. And they essentially sent their entire, and I'm talking like a very large organization with factories and stuff like that. Yes, and they, much before the pandemic, much before the first lockdowns and everything, I was there, so I can tell for sure, they sent everyone home. And they said, okay, let's see how it works. Should we, have that need? Okay, these guys, they prepared. It would have been great if this happened before, but much before, but still it happened. And it happened on time. So when the pandemic came, it wasn't such a big problem for them. So I think that, preparing for disasters, that's very important. Resilience, having resilience, organization resilience in your head, it's something that you have to think of, not just an economic downturn, or that you lose clients, which is of course very important and it's a day-to-day thing, but also things that are out of control, such as
Yeah.
the pandemic, you know, I don't know, or like an internet lockdown, I don't know, stuff. Anything can happen. We can see that. So I think that would be my first advice. And then the second advice, again, remote. Trust people. Enjoy, you know, working from home, and also that gives you unlimited advantages. Another thing that I've been, you know, during this call, I've been giving different tips regarding remote work. Another very important topic regarding remote work, and this affects you, is that the talent pool, it's enormous.
Yes,
It's
it
huge,
is.
right?
Well, that was, yeah, go on, sorry. I was going to say, brings me
Yeah,
to the next question.
no, please.
I was just going to say, bringing me on to the next question, that what would you ask of a modern talent partner as a result of all this?
Exactly. Yeah, perfect. So that's exactly the thing, that working remote, you know, makes the talent pool absolutely, literally and absolutely global.
Yes.
You can find people literally in any place of the world and then work with them directly. You don't have to worry about them having to, you know, come to your country. I mean, you can can give the option, but it's not now a requirement anymore. I for example, here in Berlin, it's becoming harder and harder to find people, and many of the companies that I work with, especially startups, the entire team is non-German, and that's not a, you know, a discrimination thing. It's just that they couldn't find, you know, anybody else. You know, I mean, it was the people that were available, and most of them. And when I say non-German, not that they go and find foreign people living here, such as me, but literally people that they moved to work in the company. Like where I was, one of the jobs that I had here as CTO, the entire team was made of people that actually moved in to work there. So
Really?
because, yeah, and it was 15 developers. So we had like 14 different nationalities just in the dev team, because there were 2 Argentinians, me and my brother, I was working with him, and the rest were each one from a different country. Wow. So we even had someone from Iceland, which are like super few. Well, we have one. Wow. So you would have, yeah, entire teams that are composed of people that have to move in, you know, to work in the company, and that's happening because, you know, how the startup world is moving very fast. If you work remote, you don't need to bring the people in, and you which of course saves a lot of money and costs and complication for everyone. But at the same time, I mean, I think you always have to give the opportunity to for people to move in, but nonetheless, if they want. But nonetheless, you have a much larger talent pool and much quicker. It's much easier to hire someone remote. The paperwork is much faster than same thing that you would have to do anyway, which is to hire outside and then do all the paperwork and then bring them in. I remember that we had to wait half an hour every time that we wanted to get a developer, and that was after finding the developer. Which took another half a year. So
yeah, it's it can take a long time, can't it? It can be a long-winded process. But no, I completely agree. I think it opens up so many more doors and avenues now, especially if companies are open to remote work and fully remote projects, because it makes my job a lot easier. And it also, I suppose, in the past, there's been companies that, you know, demanded candidates be on site for whatever reason, and that's ruled out. So that's ruled out some of the top talent because of that. But now, yeah, I agree. Moving forward, it could open up a few more doors for sure. Okay. Well, look, Martin, yeah, for sure. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. I really appreciate your time, and it's been brilliant. It's been very insightful, and thank you for sharing your experiences, your advice, and I suppose, yeah, lessons you've learned as well. And I'm sure that a lot of people can learn from it.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I think I really enjoyed talking, and this is one of the topics that I enjoy the most talking, I guess. So sorry. Thanks a lot. And yeah.
Well, look, thank you very much, and hopefully we can have you back on again in, I suppose, in one of the Head in the Cloud series later on. We can discuss some more interesting topics too.
Anytime. Also technical stuff. That would be fun.
Thank you. You take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. You too. Bye-bye. Ciao.